But no, I mean, like, look at Rogue's example. Rogue was never the stories of the X-Men. They were kids. They were safe for kids. They never sexualized Rogue. She was idealized, crazy idealized. That costume was skin tight. And yeah, you can maybe screenshot some of her poses and it looks a little sex kittenish or whatever. But in context of the cartoon, you're watching it, there's nothing sexual going on. She's just like getting up off the ground after she's been knocked down in a fight or something like that. That was par for the course. Cartoons in the 80s and 90s, they idealized the forms. I remember it was one, this happened even in the 80s before the 90s. They would, if a person was wearing a skin tight suit, I think it might have been Firestar in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Like the first two seasons, if Firestar turned around, you would see the line of the crack in her rear. Not because it's trying to show you her butt or anything, but it's just, it looks weird. It looks flat. It's a 2D art form and it looks flat if it's just a one swatch of yellow. You know, it's an animated cartoon, so they can't really have the shadings and the, you know, the more realistic tone or shading and light and everything. So they would draw like a little line around the rear, and that was fine. They did it with Spider-Man 2, for crying out loud. And it wasn't the male gaze, it wasn't all, but you know, you had these stupid you know, back then you probably even had more the moralizing censorship as well. But today you'd have this, you know, the woke coming in and wringing their hands over something that they want to censor and they want to stop because they think it means this or whatever. It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. The superheroes came from the visual media. So even television and movies, you know, now we're moving. We're no longer a static picture. But that's where these archetypes came from. That's where these archetypes came from prominence in static visual mediums. And even in the static visual mediums, I've talked about this before, how whether, you know, we're talking about comic books, but you can trace those all the way back to paintings on mythological, you know, vases or whatever, or the Parthenon and so forth, you know, mythological structures, and all the way back to cave paintings. And one cool thing about all of those incarnations was that, you know, cave paintings back in the day, they think that a lot of these paintings were about the hunt or about certain rituals that were important to tribes, and they were in the middle of a cave. They didn't have flashlights to go in there with, so they had a torch. They had this flickering light going into the cave. In a lot of instances, maybe it was part of some sort of rite of passage ritual where maybe they were, you know, chewing some, you know, sensory enhancing or affecting root or something like that, you know. But they would go into these caves with that flickering torch, and you'd see these paintings on the wall. It's an uneven canvas, right? It's a rock wall, the painting on there and the pigmentation. So the flickering light on the wall and everything. So there was a sense of movement to these images. You can trace that with the other media, like the vase paintings, you know, Greek vase paintings, whenever it's circular, you know, it can be, you know, spun around and whatnot. But even comic books, when they were first created or first printed back in the day, they were printed with that, I forget the name of the process, but you only had, you know, like 3 or 4 colors that they would print in, and it was almost like pointillism, you know, that dot matrix kind of thing that's the idea anyway. Or if you wanted to create this color, you had to combine these primary colors in a way, you know, to evoke the image of that color. So if you take the earliest comic books and the way they were printed and you really magnify them, you'll see the bunch of different little separate colors, which panning back makes the image of green or so forth. And a lot of brain scientists say that when you look at that, there is a sense of movement. Your brain, especially our brains today, won't really catch that looking at a comic book, even if it was one printed like that back in the day. But back in the day, you can imagine these kids, you know, getting these comic books, these colorful heroes that have all of the visceral appeal of the Greek gods and different mythological characters before them. You know, that's the kinds of stories that are being told. That's the kind of archetypes these characters embody. And then you pick up a comic like that with that sort of, even if it's subconscious, that sense of movement, there's something, you know, just appealing about that. You know, this is long before every kid had a tablet or an iPad or whatever. So that's appealing to them. Now, then, of course, television, your radio television developed. And these characters, we need to see that movement. We want to see the idealized forms. Yes, you can take it in a sexual way. Of course you can. Anything can be made a sexual manner today. I mean, that's just the nature of humanity, but that doesn't mean that there are that this is something we need to change from the ground up or whatever. I mean, those designs in the X-Men 97 are just straight up ugly. I mean, look at any of those characters and take a screenshot from the original to the ones they're doing now, and they're just butt ugly to look at. It's like you've just sucked out all the fun and the joy and the idealization of these characters, and that's what's great about them. It's not just their physical design. You know that they're going to be tempered. All the stories are going to change. We've got to have stories about how this character is like this, and then this character like this. We've got to bring all of our woke ideologies into it. And apparently, I don't know. I guess they're kind of worried about the backlash on that. Let me get to the super chat and then I'll finish up my point there. Studio Super, thank you so much there. Said they say sexualization is bad, yet cheer when gals do it to themselves, dressing skimpy in public or OnlyFans. Exactly. They say it's different because ladies choose it. I don't. It doesn't matter. It has the same result. Yeah. There's no rhyme or reason to what they say. It's basically as if a white heteronormative male is creating it or saying it, it's evil. That's basically the point behind it. That's the key to all of their philosophies there.